Well, hello everyone. I'm Dr. Gozde Woelk, and today I want to talk about the woman with smell Parkinson's. It's actually based on this New York Times Magazine article that was recently also released as a podcast in June 14, 2024. And as I was listening to it, I thought I have not heard of this before, and it's very interesting and it's very important both for the patient side and also for the doctors because it's very exciting news about Parkinson's disease diagnosis. So I put together this presentation for you, and I'll talk about it. But if you want to read the article yourself, I put the link there and the title so you can look for it yourself. So the woman who can smell Parkinson's, her name is Joy Milne, and she is known as the supersmeller. She's been like that since she was born. She could always distinguish different smells way better than others. And her grandmother was actually the same way, but she was actually told by her grandmother to not show this everyone because it's not very ladylike to talk about the different things you smell every day. So she, even though she had this talent, until very later in life, she was not able to showcase her talent. She was a nurse, and then she was married to her high school boyfriend, who later became an anesthesiologist. She actually wanted to go to medical school herself, but her husband needed her support, so she chose to support her husband's career while also working as a nurse herself. This is her and her husband later, when they were much older than their wedding picture. And in 1982, one day, her husband already knew that she was very good at smelling things, but that one August evening in 1982, and it was right after her husband's 32nd birthday, she smelled something different in her husband. She later described it as this unsavory, thick must smell. And this smell also reminded her of her mother-in-law, her husband's mother. They smelled very similar, but she couldn't tell what that smell meant. She just knew that it was different because she could actually tell everyone's smells from one another. This was different. But at the time, other than telling her husband that, you smell different, maybe you forgot to brush your teeth, maybe you should take another shower, because it was a lingering smell. It was not just one day, but starting in August 1982, her husband was smelling different to her every day. That thick, musty smell stayed with her husband. And then in 1994, so 12 years later, the husband started having these differences in him, some personality changes. He was becoming more detached, he was getting angry very easily, and he could not hold his golf club anymore that he's been using for many years. He was not able to do that anymore. So they went to see a doctor, the husband being a doctor himself, and he got diagnosed with Parkinson's. And he started treatment right away with L-Dopa and ropinirole. And but this was by the time that his symptoms were already very severe. And at this point, I want to talk about Parkinson's disease, although very in a very short way. Um, you see, there's a diminished substantia nigra in Parkinson's disease compared to a normal, a healthy person substantia nigra. And how do we see this in the clinical part? This is by the time we diagnose Parkinson's. So this is when the symptoms are actually out there, too hard to ignore, as you may say. They have bradykinesia, which means they move more slowly than before. Their facial expressions also diminish. Someone who used to be very who used to show a lot of emotions before might turn into someone that keeps a straight face most of the time. And of course, people around them notice that, and their voice changes. And a person does not have to have all these symptoms to be diagnosed with Parkinson's, but most of the people, obviously, tremors in their hands, dystonia, difficulty walking, and they also have the non-motor symptoms like gastrointestinal problems and some mental issues. A lot of people report personality changes. People, their loved ones cannot really recognize them anymore. And this is what happened with Joy's husband, Les Milne. And funny thing is, years later, Les's mother also got diagnosed with Parkinson's. And at this point, and then the mother sadly passed away, and Les and Joy were the ones taking care of the mother. And then, as it took a big toll on their relationship, it's not easy to be a caretaker, and it was not easy for them to live with this diagnosis. They decided, let's attend one of those meetings where Parkinson patients and caregivers get together, like a support group. And at that meeting, Joy was behind a man who just took off his jacket, and she suddenly smelled something that was very familiar to her. That was the smell that she's been smelling on her husband for the past 12 years. And in that moment, Joy understood what this was about. All the people at the meeting who had Parkinson's disease had this distinctive smell, only distinctive to her. Others could not smell it, but she has hyperosmia, so she could tell the little differences that regular people cannot tell. So this was the moment Joy decided to do more research on this, to do whatever she can on this, because it could be helpful to her husband or others. And she started looking for scientists, researchers that could help her with that. And you can imagine it's not easy to convince a scientist that you just came up with something revolutionary, right? They want evidence. They want you to tell them all the symptoms, everything you've seen, and they want to be convinced. But the history of smell in diagnosing different medical issues is out there. It's not the first time someone has used smell to diagnose something. And you see some examples here in the ancient Greece and China. They wanted to confirm someone having tuberculosis, and what they did was they would toss a patient's sputum into hot coals, because if you toss it on the hot coals, a lot of smoke is going to come out of it, and they would smell the fumes. And if it smelled a certain way, it meant the patient had that disease. As we know now, phenylketonuria patients have a musty smell in urine. Typhoid fever could smell like baking bread, yellow fever, raw meat. And we actually, you might have heard about this already, but the scientists train dogs that can smell COVID-19 in people. And they diagnose a lot of people that way. And on this picture on the right, you see these are urine colors. It's a chart doctors back then used to detect different diseases within patients, because that's all they had at the time, and they just made use of whatever they could. And finally, Joy found the professor, Professor Knack, who was doing Parkinson's research at the University of Edinburgh. And she talked to him. And this part I took from the article, because he says, if you told me that, as he got Parkinson's, he had a change in smell, then I wouldn't care about it that much. But she said the smell change came years before. And that is significant. That's the important part. And they decided, okay, how are we going to test her abilities? Because all we have is that she smelled her husband and then she smelled some other people at this meeting, but we have to come up with a study. So what they did is they recruited 12 people. 6 of them were Parkinson's patients and 6 of them were healthy individuals. They made them wear new laundered, freshly, no smell t-shirt for 24 hours. And then they cut the t-shirts in half, put them in little packets, and sent them to Joy. And Joy smelled them all at random. And they asked her to do two things. One was rating the intensity of the Parkinson's odor, and the other one was because all the t-shirts were identical. They asked her to match the t-shirts because they were all halves. They wanted to see if she can tell uh, if the two halves belong to that one person, if she can match the halves of the t-shirts. And she did it all, and she did it all correctly. She was able to match all the t-shirts to the other halves. She was able to identify all the Parkinson's patients, except for one. That one person was a false positive at first, they thought. And then, as I put it here, what happened was that years later, that person was also diagnosed with Parkinson's. So, in a way, you can tell she diagnosed it early. And they wrote a paper on this. Again, you can look up this paper online. They wrote a paper. They basically, this was the first time Joy's special talent was proven in a scientific way. But she didn't want to stop there. She was very adamant about using her talent for the good of all the people. She was a scientist at heart. She, as you can see, she's listed as one of the authors of this paper. So she's the author in every paper she's in, and she is on every level of this scientific studies. So this diagram I took from the article they wrote kind of shows how they took the, so one interesting thing is the smell was not coming from the armpit. That was another thing that was noted. The best smell came from the back of the head, the neck area, and the back of the people, the torso, not the armpits. That was mentioned a few times, and she likes to talk about that too. So they did other studies with more people, and then they wrote these articles. And what they did is, I want to show you this thing first. So this is a GCMS, a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. What is this? Basically, what this thing does is it takes the gas and it divides it into different molecules. And it tells us all the molecule fragments inside that air. So this was very helpful because this could tell what Joy was smelling. But to prove that it was what Joy was smelling, they had to make an addition to this GCMS machine where they put something like an elephant's trunk and to the gas cylinder part, and they made Joy smell each one of the fragments so that she can also tell them when she smells it, oh, this was the Parkinson smell that I got. So thanks to that, they were able to identify 3 molecular fragments out of 200 that the spectrometer showed them. Icosane, octadecanol, hippuric acid. And when they tested the sebum of Parkinson's patients, each of them were found in very high concentrations. Like I put this here as well, the smell was not in the armpits, but on the neck and mid-back. And they wanted to see what does it mean? We have these 3 molecules, but what does it mean for us? So Perdita Baran and her team did another study, again with Joy Milne helping them. This study was to see which metabolic pathway is disrupted in Parkinson's patients that causes them to have higher concentrations of these 3 metabolites that we were able to identify. And they found that there were disruptions to mitochondrial and lysosomal functions. I don't want to get into the details, but the articles are there. You're free to look it up. And once that was also proven, of course, this is not where it stopped. Neurologist Werner Pöwe from University of Innsbruck reached out to them He was working on the isolated REM sleep behavior disorder. This disorder is where patients act out in their dreams. We hear this from patients' spouses a lot. They say, "Oh, my husband just, in the middle of the night, he kicks me. He tried to, choke my neck, and he did all these things that were very unusual of him, and he was asleep. It happened in the middle of the night." And this scientist, he's working on the correlation, the relationship between isolated REM sleep behavior and Parkinson's disease. And this IRBD is also thought to be very predictive of Parkinson's, where 8 out of 10 new IRBD patients later on develop Parkinson's within a decade. This is very significant. So he thought, what if we combine these two findings together? Because that way we can have something even more powerful in detecting Parkinson's earlier. So what they did is they again recruited 1,000 people. Some of them were controls, some of them were Parkinson's, 3,000 people, I'm sorry, some of them were Parkinson's patients. And they took swabs from upper back. So the good thing about these studies is they're non-invasive. All they have to do is have the nurse just swab people's backs. So it was easy to recruit patients for the studies as well, which is another good part of all of this. And they sent these swabs to Professor Byron and Joy Milne. And Joy smelled these swabs, and with some of them, she said they have this biscuity sweet smell. It's not exactly the Parkinson smell that I smelled in others. And she said it's not exactly the same smell as the people she identified as the normal healthy people. This was something in between. And they call this the intermediate expression. So people with IRBD who were more likely to develop Parkinson's in the future had this biscuity sweet smell that distinguished them from the others who were not developing Parkinson's later. And of course, this was also published as an article. And as you see, Joy is the author in each one of these articles. She was involved. She gave many speeches. She went all around the world. She went to Tanzania to work with rats who were smelling other diseases. And, she helped a lot of people, a lot of scientists all around the world with her special talent. And sadly, in 2015, Joy's husband, Les, passed away at the age of 65. And one thing Joy talks about is that Les made her promise to continue doing Parkinson's research because he knew she would be very helpful for others, even though it was too late for him. And Joy decided to keep this promise because it could be very, very important. We might not have a cure for Parkinson's. We might not have the medication for Parkinson's that would stop it from very early on. But if we can detect Parkinson's 10 years before the symptoms start, we might come up with new medications. Uh, we can work on the patients that we think are likely to have Parkinson's, and then we can actually observe the changes in them in the next 10 years, other than their smell change. So this could be groundbreaking in science, and it already is, and there's so much more research to do on this. And if we have time, I would like to show you a 3-minute video of Joyce, just so you can hear the story from her. And because I talk too much, it would be like a summarization of the whole story again through her eyes. Oh no, I'm sorry about that. All right. And this was all. Thank you very much.
Is that the end? Oh,
Yeah, thank you.
okay. Wait a second.